Hello there.
This is our presentation about English heroes.
This is the content of our presentation.
Our first thoughts.
So, who are English heroes?
Why did they become English heroes?
Were they English heroes at the time? Less known English heroes.
Our own English heroes and the final word.
Our first thoughts. What we first thought when we heard about English heroes.
My first thought were people that changed the world in a way to everyday events like the metric system and the imperial system.
My first thought was people who fought in wars and people who changed the world to how it is today. So, who are English heroes?
English heroes aren't only people that fought in wars, but also people that invented something, like Charles Darwin and Isaac Newton. Charles Darwin came up with the idea of natural selection, and Isaac Newton formulated the laws of motion and universal gravitation.
Also, English heroes are politicians, like Winston Churchill, who was a strong leader in the World War, and Horatio Nelson, the leader of the Royal Navy. English writers were also English heroes, like William Shakespeare, who wrote many poems and plays, like Romeo and Juliet. And Charles Dickens, he also wrote many books. One example is The Christmas Carol.
Why did they become English heroes? Winston Churchill and Horatio Nelson because they were great leaders. Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin because they invented world-changing things. Charles Dickens because he wrote popular books. And William Shakespeare because he made world-famous plays and poems.
Were they English heroes at the time? Winston Churchill was an English hero at his time because he was a very good leader in World War II. Horatio Nelson was an English hero because he was a great leader of the Royal Navy from 1794 to 1805. Isaac Newton was called a natural philosopher hero because he discovered gravitation in 1673.
Charles Darwin wasn't a hero at his time because people didn't like him. He believed in a different theory than the theory that was a god, and thought of him as a myth. Charles Dickens was an English hero at his time because of his famous books he wrote, like The Christmas Carol. William Shakespeare was an English hero at his time because of the plays he wrote, like Romeo and Juliet.
Less known English heroes. Tim Berners-Lee. At the time we speak, this man is 64 years old. He invented the World Wide Web, aka the Internet. Alexander Graham Bell was an inventor. He invented the telephone. David Beckham, he was a former professional football player.
Leonard Cheshire, he was a famous military pilot, and J.K. Rowling, she wrote a lot of famous books, like Harry Potter. Now our own English heroes. Um, my personal English hero is Daisy Ridley because she played in the Star Wars movie franchise. She started at the Star Wars The Force Awakens, and she's my favorite actor.
Tom Holland, who is my English hero and an actor, plays in the Marvel movies as the famous character Spider-Man.
And now the final word. I learned that English heroes are not just people that fought in wars, but also writers and philosophers, and that is indeed true that the people that changed the world became English heroes.
I learned that people that had amazing ideas weren't always respected, like Charles Darwin, and that people who fought in wars weren't English heroes, but politicians in wars were English heroes.
This was our presentation.
I hope you liked it.
The end.